hope you're having a good afternoon so far. Welcome to the first ever virtual Nosh at Noon. This is the last of our first ever, so we're very excited to have you guys all here today. We hope you had a good weekend, you're staying safe and doing well. We are very interested in today's important topic, tips and recommendations for reopening your business under COVID-19. Before we get started, I want to make sure that everyone is aware of all of the different virtual DMI events that we are running right now. We're running a series of committee meetings and meetups and all sorts of different activities to make sure that our members have the resources they need to survive and to thrive, make the connections that they need now more important than ever, and continue to advocate on behalf of our members. So we're very excited to launch about 5 to 10 different virtual meetings a week. I hope you can join us for a few coming up. There are a handful that I think everyone will like to know about. So I want to highlight two in particular. This coming Thursday at 2 p.m., the Inclusiveness and Economic Development Committees are having a joint meeting where Alder Shiva Bedar-Silov and the Chief Diversity Officer at UW Health will be discussing the disparate impacts of COVID-19. I hope you can join us for this very important community discussion. Again, that's this Thursday, May 21st at 2 p.m. Next, we're going to highlight a week from this Thursday is our second ever virtual What's Up Downtown breakfast, where we will host a discussion on business recovery after COVID-19 with myself, Zach Brandon, the president of the Greater Madison Chamber of Commerce, and Deb Archer, the president and CEO of Destination Madison. Hope you can join us for that important discussion as well. That's 8 a.m. on Thursday, May 28th. All this information is available on our website at www.downtownmadison.org. Before we get started today, just want to run over a couple of logistics, some important information so that we can make sure we have the best possible event. As you can see, we're in a webinar function, so everyone is muted. That does not mean we don't want to have a discussion. What we want, though, is people to ask their questions through the Q&A function. So if you look down, you'll see the Q&A tab at the bottom of your screen. Just enter your questions there, and at the end, after all of the presenters are done with their presentations, we will ask your questions. Your questions are very important because we really do want this to be a discussion. Lastly, we want to absolutely thank our sponsors today. Without them, we would not be here. So a huge thanks to our major series sponsor, Scenair, our program sponsor, the Fiore Companies, and our host, the Hilton Madison Monona Terrace. We're going to hear a quick couple of updates from our sponsors, and then we're going to get on with the program. So I'll see you in a few minutes. Next up is the Vice President of Scenair, Chris Jennings. Welcome, Chris.
Thanks, Jason. Appreciate it. Hope everybody's doing well out there, and welcome to the event. First off, thanks to DMI for the work that you continue to do to keep the Madison downtown community connected, to keep us all in the loop on developments in what is a new and trying time, and to really continue to foster that sense of community that's so important, and one of the reasons why we are a big believer and a sponsor in this series. As I've always kind of kick off on these things, one of the reasons why Scenair is really interested in doing the Nosh at Noon series is because of our why statement. We're in the business of housing and economic development and providing funds for those types of enterprises. But at the end of the day, the reason why we exist is because we have a fundamental belief that all people deserve the opportunities that come with living in healthy communities. And that's really being tested right now and couldn't be more important. Obviously, with the pandemic, there's all of the everything that goes around with physical health. So I hope that everybody out there that's attending the event today as well, that everybody around you as well, and that you continue to exercise good, safe practices through our leadership here in Dane County. But at the end of the day, this is a really timely topic for us as well, because it's an intersection of business health, which is just as important to a healthy community as it is to have physical health. And this is really at a crux in time where, as of right now and as of what we know today, Dane County Safer at Home guidelines are going to be lifted a week from tomorrow. and people are going to be contemplating returns to the office for those that have been working at distance as we have for a while. I've been grateful for our organization's focus on the health of all of the people in our business. And I'm sure that our panelists are going to enlighten us on some good ways to keep that up, while at the same time doing the hard work of economically reopening our state so that we can maintain vital communities, particularly here in Madison. So thanks to DMI, the balance of the sponsors, and on with the show.
Thank you, Chris, very much for all of your work. You guys are really at the forefront of what's happening right now. So thank you, Chris. Thank you for your sponsorship as well. Next up, we have the most recent past board chair, my good friend, Stacy Nemeth, the Chief Operating Officer of the Fiore Companies. Stacy, you're up.
Thanks, Jason. I wanted to first start by asking and just really reassuring everyone about the work that DMI has been doing during this time, and wanting to give a great shout out to all of the DMI staff. You have done an amazing job of pivoting on a very, very rapid basis and continuing to bring great programming such as Nosh at Noon to all of our members. So thank you to Jason and to all of the DMI staff. At Fiore, we are a locally owned real estate investment and management company. We've been in Madison since the early 1920s. And for us, this is really an unprecedented time, as it is for everybody else, I'm sure, on this webinar. So we are very interested in hearing more about how we safely not only get our own staff back to work, but how we assist our tenants, especially those in multi-tenanted buildings, how we bring folks safely back into the buildings, and how we try to resume some sense of normalcy while continuing to take care of one another in our community. So we thank DMI for the opportunity, and we look forward to hearing our panelists.
Thank you, Stacy. Thank you for the very kind words. We really appreciate it. And thank you for all your help on the board of directors. Next up, we have remarks from our host. Normally, we would be at the Hilton Monona Terrace, but unfortunately, because of the pandemic, we're not there. But we're sending all of our good karma, positivity, everything Skip Harless's way. Skip is the general manager and a good friend, former colleague of mine. So Skip, we wish we were at the Hilton today, but we want to hear how everything's going. So please welcome Skip Harless.
Thank you, Jason, so much. I really appreciate the opportunity to say a few words as the venue host, even though I can't actually host. So I appreciate it even more. You know, beyond the no gatherings order, we really made a very difficult decision back in mid-April to temporarily suspend our operations. And so although that was difficult, it really gave us a chance to put a lot of focus and attention on what the new normal of a hotel and hospitality might look like. And our main priority is, of course, safety. But we also want to do everything we can to overcome the anxiety that our associates and potentially our guests may have. So one of the components of that I'm the most excited about is a program called Hilton Clean Stay. And we partnered with the Mayo Clinic and the makers of Lysol, and have a really holistic cleanliness and disinfection program that we're putting in place. Of course, it starts with enhanced training and making sure that our associates follow good safety protocols, but there's a lot of different pieces and parts to it, and it's lots of details still be working out. You know, there's a lot of information that comes at us right now as we're all trying to figure out how to make this happen correctly. But we're very focused and targeted on trying to reopen in something like mid-June and have all of these components in place. Our digital check-in and use of digital keys, so you can go right to the guest rooms, and all these disinfection points, and providing supplies and safety for both our guests and for our associates. And hopefully very soon after that, we can welcome DMI back to the building. And I really look forward to that day. And I really thank you so much for the chance, like I said, to talk, even though we're hosting digitally. So have a great meeting.
Thank you, Skip. As always, thank you for your leadership in the very important hospitality community downtown. Skip is just an outstanding person. If you haven't got a chance to meet him one-on-one, I hope you can soon. because that means we'll be all back together again. So again, thank you to Fiore Companies, to Sinair, and to the Hilton Madison Monona Terrace. We want to get started right away, though, with the program, because we've got nearly 100 people on this call today to learn more about tips and recommendations for reopening your business. So we're going to have presentations from 3 great speakers. They're going to go one right after another. And then at the end, again, we're going to take question and answers. So please submit your questions at the bottom on the Q&A function of your controls. First up today, we have Bonnie Koenig. And Bonnie, we've quickly got to know each other during this crisis. And Bonnie Koenig has been absolutely outstanding to work with for the business community. Bonnie is the Environmental Health Services Supervisor for Public Health Madison-Dane County. After Bonnie Koenig, we're going to hear from Jackie Anderson, an HR business partner with the QTI Group. And then last but certainly not least, our good friend Deb Alton, an architectural and design consultant with Atmosphere Commercial Interiors, will round out the group. So Bonnie, you're up first.
Well, thank you very much for having me here. I'm very excited that DMI has invited Public Health Madison and Dane County to be sharing out some of our business best practices and tips for reopening safely. And I'm just going to take a moment to share here. Can just a thumbs up, Jason, from you if you can see my screen. All right, so we'll get started here. So my name is Bonnie Koenig, and as Jason said, I work for Public Health Madison-Dane County, and my normal role is the Environmental Health Supervisor for licensed establishments, and that includes overseeing all the sanitarians that do the inspections at restaurants, retail establishments, hotels, swimming pools, tattoo, body piercing, campgrounds, etc. But as we're changing gears right now for the incident command for this COVID emergency response, my new role is business liaison. And I feel it's a fitting role because I have a relationship already with 4,200 licensed establishments in our community. And I'm looking forward to taking that experience and information that I have for businesses forward to all of you today for your businesses. So we have created a PowerPoint presentation with some of the best tips for reopening. And we're really hoping that all our businesses can begin preparing for that reopening process very soon. And I'm hoping that there will be a message sometime this week so that businesses can know when they can begin that preparation phase and when we might have the information for when the next phase of full reopening, and when I say full, it would be an incremental gradual reopening will begin. But for now, we're going to focus on what that preparation phase prior to reopening will look like. Oh, and I don't know why I'm unable to get my, oh, there we go. So again, just reiterating today, the focus on this presentation is preparing for reopening. So there are a lot of things that operators need to be considering before they reopen, especially if they've been closed for a while. One of the most important things is taking a look at your facility and doing a check on the electricity, the water, the trash. During this time of closure, there's things that could have occurred that you may not be aware of, like pest activity, maybe some mold growth, even some structural issues. So we want all operators to take a good look at their facility and to make sure that things are in place for reopening. Another important thing is the HVAC system. We have new evidence that indicates that it's COVID has may be spread through HVAC systems that haven't been replaced with a new filter for proper airflow. So we're recommending that all new businesses put a new filter in, have their HVAC systems looked at. And also if you have the opportunity to open your windows and have some fresh air in your facility when you reopen, that will also reduce the risk of the spread of COVID-19. We have additional resources available on our website regarding this type of reopening and a checklist for this facility assessment. And after this presentation, we'll make sure that you have a full PowerPoint presentation with all these resources, which is much more extensive than what I'm sharing today, so that you can be best prepared. So one of the questions is, well, what about our building's water safety? And there is some evidence to indicate that when we don't run our water for a period of time, it can that water can become stagnant, and it can create problems with biofilm bacteria and Legionella. And for that reason, we're asking that all businesses, when they return to work, that they run their water and for a length of time, and we're recommending minimally 10 to 15 minutes. It sounds like a lot, but just to flush out those systems really well prior to full reopening. And more information can be found from your water utility. So again, this is exactly what I was stating in the first slide. We want you to run your water through your pipes for several minutes to remove the stagnant water. And then we also want you to be doing this with the other water use appliances like your ice machines, your humidifiers, your dishwashers. If you have any concerns, call water utilities or your plumber for more information. And what else should a restaurant or retail or business be doing when they're returning for reopening? Unfortunately, some of our businesses in certain places had to close down very quickly. And there may be things that need to be addressed before reopening, like discarding any expired foods or anything that might have been open and subjected to pest infestation. And for establishments that serve food, we're really concerned about making sure that the equipment is still in good operating condition. So there needs to be a check on the coolers and the freezers to make sure they're still operating at proper temperatures prior to opening. In a lot of our facilities, we have dish machines. That's for lodging facilities as well as restaurants. We need to be checking those and make sure they're running properly and checking our sanitizer solution. And everything in the facility needs to be washed, cleaned, and sanitized. That includes all the utensils you may use, maybe the linens in a lodging facility, as well as all the surfaces. There is more information on our website on how to do this environmental cleaning prior to reopening, as well as on the CDC website. So how do we prevent the spread of COVID-19 as we reopen? And how do we reopen safely, incrementally, and gradually to get our economy going and to have our businesses, get back to business, yet do it in the safest manner so that we can have what we want is to be opening safely, gradually, but we want this to happen in a way where we don't have to go backwards. We want to continue to go forward and do a good job. And then if we're able to do that, the other important piece of this is we're building confidence throughout our community that we are doing this, we're doing it right, we're in it together. And because of that, it is safe to start going out and patronizing establishments, businesses, restaurants with the protocols that are going to be in place for the safety of our community. So we are recommending that all businesses review their employee illness plan. When we go back to work, we no longer can assume that people know not to come to work when ill or that they're pre-screening for fever or other symptoms of COVID. We need to have a policy and plan in place so that we can ensure that the staff that are coming back and all the employees are doing such, and so that employers can ensure that no ill people are coming to work. We have already begun creating a template policy that businesses can use and also some training materials that will go along with that. So for businesses that may not have ever done this before, we got you covered. We have those materials and trainings available for you so that you can, during the preparation phase, have a written policy and have that time and training materials to train all your staff. The next thing we're really concerned about is that social distancing piece. We know that if we are able to social distance 6 feet or greater at all times, that is a really effective way to prevent the spread of COVID-19. However, we also know that this may not be realistic in a lot of business settings. So for business settings where that can't be done all the time, we are asking that all the people that are returning to work wear a cloth face covering. For the type of business that you're doing, there may be additional PPE that will be required for your protection. For instance, there might be in a retail establishment an additional plexiglass barrier that's added if you're standing in one position all the time and having one-on-one with many people throughout the day. So the additional PPE will be based on the use and type of business sector that you're in. And the training for that is really important for all employers to be doing during this preparation phase. And lastly, we really want all employers to be training their staff on proper personal hygiene. That means that everybody needs to understand what proper cough and sneeze etiquette is and needs to be trained on that. And all the staff needs to be trained on how they can participate in facility cleaning, keeping the soap and hand wash stocked at the hand wash sinks, and possibly in other situations, how to wear the gloves that might be required for the jobs that they're doing. And again, we're not going to leave you hanging at Public Health Madison-Dane County. We already have many of those resources right now on our website, and we're creating additional resources to be used exactly as training and policy procedures for our businesses. And I'm going to talk a little bit about employee illness policy, but I just want to take a pause here to say, I know that many of these businesses that are on the phone right now have worked very hard already and have a lot of policies and procedures in place. And I just want to thank you for that. I really trust that all our businesses really know what is best for their business. But for some of those that may not have had the opportunity to do so, that's when we in public health have those additional resources, or you can use our resources as guidance for the policies and procedures you've already developed. So an employee illness policy guidance is really important. We need to adopt this so that we can screen all workers for symptoms of COVID. We want to somehow have some documentation that the workers have been trained on this and are agreeing to follow this. And we do have an employee illness agreement document that we've created that all businesses can download and use for that agreement. And then we want employees to continue to self-monitor their temperature and pre-screen for symptoms every day before they ever leave their home and arrive at work, and have that agreement with their employer that they would not show up for work with any of those symptoms. So there is going to be some additional requirements for essential non-healthcare workers that are different for what we call our healthcare or critical infrastructure workers. And I don't want to get too much into this, but we do have a really great fact sheet on our website called Guidance for Essential Non-Healthcare Workers. But basically what businesses need to know is if they have a worker who has been exposed to a person who tested positive, they will need to quarantine for 14 days, as we've been asking all along. Now, this may be different for healthcare workers, but still in our community, we really want all other non-essential workers to be following this 14-day quarantine. What that means is they stay at home and they do not leave their house, and they screen their symptoms every day. If this person who's being quarantined becomes ill, then they begin an isolation period, and they would be working with a public health nurse to determine their next steps. And we would be working with that employer to know when that person can return to work. So social distancing, this is now you're going to start hearing people transition from this term to physical distancing so that it's better understood by all. I mean, we all understand this moment in time has been really challenging for social opportunities. We don't need to call it out even more by saying social distancing. So we really think that physical distancing is a new term that can better explain what we want people to do when they return to work. We want them to stay 6 feet or more apart at all times. And if they can't do that, we really want them taking those additional measures and using proper PPE for protection. An example would be when we enter an elevator or a restroom. Those are confined spaces where 6 feet social distancing is simply not possible. And in those situations, cloth-based coverings will be required for everyone's safety. We want to reduce the number of workers that are present at work, and we want to rearrange our workspaces for that social distancing. And some ideas that we have are to stagger the shifts and to continue to do the teleworking as much as possible for your business. And lastly, I really want to stress that there is a portion of workers that are vulnerable. And for those workers, we're really stressing to all businesses to take the additional precautions and make accommodations for those workers so they can continue to be safer at home and telework as much as feasible and to the extent possible. So we've already touched a little bit about personal protective equipment recommendations, or PPE. I kind of have the inside scoop. I already know if you're going to be an employee in a workspace where you're not going to be able to do that social distancing, Public Health Madison and Dane County is going to ask that you wear a cloth-based covering. What this does is it protects others from contracting COVID if you were to have it and be asymptomatic. It does not protect you from wearing it from contracting COVID. However, there is some protection in it, but it's not really for you. It's to prevent the spread to others. But if you're in a situation like a retail establishment where you're at a cash register standing all day long and having others come up to there, that's where that additional barrier, like a plexiglass barrier that's installed, would be in addition to that cloth face covering and help protect you when you're working. We're really asking that all employers have a supply of cloth face coverings for their employees, and then to have a policy where the employees would be required to launder them daily. And again, I don't want to get too much into this because we have extensive information on our website along with trainings and policies that businesses can use to support these recommendations. Also, there may be certain businesses that need gloves or eye protection. And again, there is additional information on our website to support that as well. And it looks like I'm coming up to time. And so I'm just looking at my slides here. Just going to stress a few more things and then I'll have to close out. But personal hygiene, really important. Make sure that training is taking place. We definitely want to do heightened facility cleaning, and there's many tools and information out there on how to do this, but any highly touched surfaces need to be cleaned and sanitized often throughout the day, and there needs to be a system in place for that. And I know that there are some businesses right now that have taken advantage of the curbside pickup, the drop-off that is available right now. We also have more information on how to do that safely on our website as well. And I'm going to wrap it up due to time and let us go to the next speaker. And thank you again for this time.
Thank you, Bonnie, very much. We really appreciate those great pieces of information, and we'll make sure to get that presentation to everyone. Next up is Jackie Anderson, HR Specialist with QTI Group.
Thanks, Jason, and thank you, DMI, for inviting QTI today. Good afternoon, everyone. For those of you unfamiliar with QTI, we're focused on helping organizations reach their full potential through people. We do this through a variety of HR service offerings like staffing, recruiting, HR outsourcing, and HR consulting. So the presentation that I have for you today is an overview for preparing to reopen or resume your business operations. And as we all know, the landscape's been ever changing since March. No one seems to have all the answers, but we'll talk about some decision points, some compliance requirements, policy considerations, safety issues, and some best practices that you may want to consider. So as you think about successfully and compassionately reintroducing your employees back to the workplace, remember, there's really no one-size-fits-all plan, and your culture and your business model will determine your next steps. So first, a couple of decision points. Who are your decision makers? As a small business, you may have just one person making those decisions. Although if you can include other stakeholders to assist you with that, it's going to help kind of divvy out the information and that needs to be gathered. Making sure everyone's on the same page. When can you get your employees back to work? Well, we all know that this is a decision based on local, county, and some federal guidelines. We've found some really good resources from the Wisconsin Economic Development Corporation. They've provided some really good industry-specific reopening guidelines. In the event that you operate outside of Wisconsin as well, the U.S. Chamber of Commerce provides a good state-by-state business reopening guide, and other resources that are important to tap into are the CDC, the EEOC, and OSHA. How should you return your employees back to work? As Bonnie was talking about, there's very different ways that we can be looking at this. It's probably not the best idea to bring all your employees back to work at once, but you may consider a staggered rotating schedule or a phased-in approach. Maintaining remote workers, if you have them already, as much as possible is probably in your best interest as well. And the importance of rethinking your physical workspace, so setting up for that social distancing. Communicate frequently and transparently. So HR is all about the people. So you'll hear me oftentimes throughout this presentation recommend the importance of creating documentation for your employees to refer back to. Provide your employees with an expected timeline for recalling or rehiring employees if you've had furloughs, and provide those returning employees with recall letters or new offer letters. Be prepared for dealing with employees facing increased personal challenges such as bereavement, financial stress, childcare issues, or other support needs. And wherever possible, people are still dealing with a lot right now. So consider flexibility where you can and adjust workloads to be reasonable. So a few compliance items to consider in policies. If you haven't already, the FFCRA poster is required to be posted in a physical location where your employees will be able to see it frequently. So if you still have employees working from home and you haven't done so already, please make sure you get that out to them via email or put it on an internal website if you have one. And then reviewing your policies and starting with your hiring practices. As you get ramped up and ready to get back to work, as you're hiring new employees, will you interview them virtually? Will you test for COVID-19 prior to hiring? That's something that you can do. It's something that you need to be prepared for in advance. How will you onboard or train these individuals? And if rehiring or recalling furloughed employees, determine and document who you're going to recall, in what order you're going to recall them. You want to ensure non-discrimination. And then making sure you prepare your process for this now to ensure a good candidate experience that represents your company well. Other policies.
Jackie, one quick point. Do you have your presentation on? We haven't shared it on the screen.
Oh.
Just want to make sure so that everyone can follow along as best they can.
I apologize.
Share screen at the bottom. You should share your screen right away, and then everyone can see the PowerPoint.
I am sorry, I'm not even seeing that anymore. Uh-oh.
That's okay too. We can get it out after, and but just go on. I wanted to make sure if you had a presentation, we can get it out. But please, by all means, continue on, and we will get it out to everyone that's on the call.
All right, I had it up. Oh no, now I'm afraid I'm going to lose it.
Don't worry about it. Just keep going. You're doing a great job.
Okay, everybody will have it at the end. I'm so sorry. Let me see where I left off now. Sorry. So, throw me off, Jason.
Sorry.
Okay. Policy, no, I apologize. I missed my cue. Leave policies. So the FFCRA, which is the Family First Coronavirus Relief Act. So there's a specific poster that needs to be out. But how does that policy fit in with your other policies, such as FMLA, your sick leave, bereavement policies? How are your vacation policies going to be potentially different? Your employees are using vacation differently this year. So if you have a policy that requires forfeiting unused vacation, consider allowing additional rollover or grace periods into the next year. Remote or work from home policies. You may have never had a remote from work or remote work from home policy before the pandemic. So making sure you document that. If your employees are working from home and it's working well and it's effective, will it continue? If so, how? And what are your childcare requirements? Will they be relaxed continue to be relaxed for a period of time? Check your travel policies. You want to make sure you keep your employees and your customers safe, whether they're just meeting customers around town or traveling to different states. And then any new policies or revised policies, it's important that you share those with your employees. Our next topic is health and safety. So a lot of items that Bonnie had already mentioned, but I'll touch on a few. So making sure that you document and explain your company policies and procedures related to illness, cleaning and disinfecting of the workplace, work meetings and travel. What will protective items be required? What PPE will be required and what may be provided by the company? Will you be taking employees' temperature each day before they arrive, as they arrive? And that's something that you can do. And if you do decide to do that, explain how that information will be managed and how it'll be stored. Explain any workplace, explain any workplace hour or schedule changes, as well as any physical workspace or traffic foot traffic flow changes. Educating employees on how to reduce the spread of virus both at home and at work. And we know we've all been inundated with that information for months, although a good way of doing so is just by posting the CDC education poster. So good hand hygiene and general COVID-19 do's and don'ts. Continuing to reinforce social distancing and good hand hygiene. So as we get back to work and we're around our friends and our coworkers, we seem to get comfortable, and it's just important to remind people not to shake hands, not to be hugging. We tend to get forgetful when we get comfortable again, and making sure that we're just, those friendly reminders continue. And as Bonnie mentioned earlier too, making sure that if an employee becomes sick or comes into contact with someone who's sick, making sure that they communicate that with you and that they are following CDC guidelines. So finally, some best practices. We want to continue to pay attention to any local public health or other orders related to COVID-19 that may affect your business. Consider designating one workplace coordinator who will be responsible for all the COVID-19 issues. Ensure your workplace cleaning company is up to date with all current methods for safely removing COVID-19 hazards and maintaining a 30-day supply of items like hand sanitizer, cleaning supplies, masks, if you're providing them. Acknowledge that your employees may feel unsettled about coming back to work. So acknowledge any concerns and treat any announcements with sensitivity. If you have an employee assistance program, that's a great resource to be able to provide to your employees. And if you don't have one in place, now might be a good time to consider adding that. And then lastly, welcoming any employees back to work, communicate your appreciation, and make sure you have a developed and communicated plan to operate and communicate in the event the virus has a resurgence or something similar comes up in the future. So I'm sorry you don't have my presentation in front of you, although just a few closing comments. You want to make sure you're communicating clearly, openly, authentically, and regularly, both verbally and in writing, so employees know what to expect and how to behave. Continue to be flexible. Schools and daycares are still closed. Summer programs, I keep finding more and more that are not going to be opening for the summer. People are still scared, and there's, again, no one-size-fits-all answer. Continue to be compassionate and flexible where you can. Consult with your appropriate experts. Times are tricky, and good faith will go a long way, although it won't replace having good expert HR, legal, and financial consultation. And then lastly, we have learned a lot in the last several months. We've all been very creative in how we work and how we're getting through this. So reflect on those changes that you've made and what may be good practices to keep in place or build on in the future. So when you do get this presentation, you will get a number of resources that we're sharing. We do have access to a QTI COVID-19 resource page. There is a checklist similar to what I've been discussing with you today, and it's a lot of sample communications that you can share with your employees. So those return to work letters I mentioned, or notifications to your employees regarding any potential or actual COVID-19 cases that you may run into. So what to do with those. We know that getting started is the hardest part, so you want to make sure that those documents were available to you. So that concludes my presentation. Thank you for your time. I'm sorry I didn't have the presentation up. I apologize for that. But if you have any questions, I look forward to answering those questions at the end.
Jackie, thank you so much. We'll absolutely get that presentation out to everyone. Again, that was Jackie Anderson with the QTI group. Next up, good friend of mine, Deb Alton, an architectural and design consultant with Atmosphere Commercial Interiors. Deb, you're up, and please share your screen if you have a presentation.
Can you all see my screen? Okay, excellent. Hi, I'm Deb Alton with Atmosphere Commercial Interiors. We are a Steelcase furniture dealer in the Madison area and also a proud member of DMI. Today I've been asked to talk more about the physical space, and I must admit that a lot of the information that Jackie and Bonnie have given you is covered in my presentation, so I'll try and move through as quickly as possible, but again, if you have any questions, please note that in the question and answer section. Trying to advance my slides, sorry. I don't know why I'm not able to advance my slide. I'm going to stop sharing for a minute and try this again. Let's try this one. Let's see if I can get to. There we go. Okay, here we go. Sorry about that. So we talked a lot already about the roadmap, and none of us have a clear idea. We're kind of doing this as we are going through this very much new information as we enter into this strange new time. The good news is that it doesn't have to all be figured out today. I know we're all going back, hopefully next week, but just as Jackie and Bonnie referred to, we are learning together, and I know it's a cliche statement, but we really are all in this together. So there are experts in every area to help you through, and don't be afraid to reach out to those experts that you have at your disposal. So the key objective, obviously we've talked about it before, is to bring our employees back safely to the workplace. And just to borrow a graphic from the World Health Organization, in terms of kind of where we are, the now is the immediate everybody work from home quarantine kind of situation. We are going into what we're referring to as the near, which is preparing ourselves for what's going to come next. And that's opening up at a slow pace. But I think what is really fascinating for a lot of us, and certainly on top of mind, is after we get through the near, what happens in the future? What does our workplace look like, you know, in the not so distant future after we get through this near phase? And we're going to have new protocols, new behaviors. Are there things we need to keep? Are there things we need to add? Again, we're all learning these things together. So I'll try and give you sort of my perspective and our perspective on what that might look like from a physical standpoint. And I love the fact that Bonnie referred to the new social distance as physical distance. I mean, that's a much kinder, we don't want to say we're not social, but physical distance is the important factor here. So there's never been a time in business when it's been more important, I think, for us to be flexible. We don't know what's going to happen. We have to be prepared for the fact that we might see a resurgence or we might see a leveling off. So being able to pivot quickly and respond to change is going to be one of the greatest characteristics of businesses who will survive and succeed. This is not an exhaustive list by any stretch of the imagination, but it's some things that I think we need to think about in terms of where we have to kind of channel our energies today. As Bonnie and Jackie referred to, the phased return of employees to our workplaces, we need to assess our employee readiness. And certainly I'll talk a little bit more about this, but the capacity of each of our workplaces to accommodate and what is our maximum capacity. Operationally, we've been doing things at a distance, but now we're going to come together. What does that mean in terms of the guests who come to see us, the deliveries that we have, maintenance protocols? Will I be spending more time and energy and money on my janitorial? And again, are my employees going to be responsible for some of their own cleaning and health habits in terms of the workplace itself? And then certainly the behaviors and messages that we send. We want to be an open, inviting, and inclusive organization, but what does the new norm look like, and what message does that send to our guests and to our employees? So all of those things really come into play in terms of what the physical workplace is going to look like. So just to back up a little bit, this is kind of a map of where we've been in the transition process. Our initial response was immediately location, everybody home. Nobody can come to work. We're going to have to figure this out. Operationally, we did alternate procedures. We're doing things different because we're at home. And the behaviors and messages and protocols were really in a crisis mode. So now we're moving into that transition period. And instead of everybody being at home and having to work from their living room or home office, now we're going to come back to the office. And what does that mean in terms of a percentage of how many people are going to be working at home still and how many people are going to be able to come into the office? And then in the future, what is the right mix? What is the right kind of balance of both home and office work? Operationally, there's so many things to think about in terms of the physical distancing, protective equipment. How do we provide that? Is that on the company to provide that or the employee? And then behaviors, messages, and protocols. You know, are masks here to stay? I think I'm hearing they are, at least for the short term. And if that is the case, what does that mean in terms of transitioning to those protocols, and what is the office etiquette? And how do we adapt quickly to that and comfortably to that? And what does that say about our organization and the culture? And you'll probably hear me talk about that a lot, and the DNA of the organization. Those behaviors, messages, and protocols, that's really what your organization is all about. That's what differentiates you from your competitors. That's what inspires creativity and connection among your employees. So even though this is a physical kind of a situation, it does affect the culture of the organization, and we have to be cognizant of that fact as well. So when we think about bringing the employees back, there are some areas that we will not be able to control. Certainly, every individual is going to come to the old workplace in a fashion that is not prescriptive. Some are going to commute via bike or walking or mass transit. We don't know what those policies and procedures are going to be in terms of the cleanliness of each of those situations. Even as we enter into the buildings that we occupy, again, I think Bonnie made reference, or maybe Jackie made reference to the elevators and the capacity. That's not really a 6-foot distancing kind of situation, but what we can do is have some visual cues about how many people can enter the elevator at once. Stairwells, elevators, all of those things have to have visual cues so the people that are entering into the facility understand the protocols. And then finally getting to the workplace, and I'll dive a little deeper into that, but basically that's going to revolve around that 6-foot physical distancing. So again, when I talk about a phased return to work, we want to make this a voluntary situation, and I know we alluded to that in the earlier presentations also. And one of the most important things you can do as a business owner is to factor in and figure out, analyze your floor plate. Really look at that 6-foot distance and figure out what is your maximum capacity. For the time being, and at least going forward, we're going to be mandated to that 6-foot distancing. So you will reach a maximum capacity that you can have in your space. And it's important that you do the work ahead of time to figure out what that is. The volunteers to work, you're going to probably have a lot of people who want to come back to work and that are raising their hand right away saying, yes, please, please, I want to leave my home office. The walls are caving in on me. I'm ready to see some new vistas and experience a different work situation. So being ready and able to understand and to prioritize who should come into the office and how they should come in is going to be a major factor for business owners and business leaders. You'll also want to consider your work style. In terms of how we work, we have a resident and nomadic workforce. We may rethink that, and I think organizations that are doing hot desking or that kind of work style will probably put that aside for the time being, or have some new very strict protocols about how that is done. So how you work is going to change. And then if you don't already have a decision tree, and I think one of the other speakers alluded to this, that your leadership team should really come together and think about what is the priority and how do we decide how to work, who is going to come into work, what are the work hours. And if you're interested in seeing an example of that, I have that I can share with you. You can contact DMI and I can send that out to you as a separate document. So a big question is, are your employees ready to work? And I know we alluded to that. Jackie talked about this a lot, the communication factor. Not all employees are going to be comfortable coming back. And that has a lot to do with their own situation, whether it's childcare, caring for an immune compromised loved one or themselves. The message should be that it's okay to defer coming back to work. I know that we're anxious to do that, but there shouldn't have to be a reason other than I'm not feeling comfortable coming back. We've all, shifted into the work from home. Most of us are doing a pretty good job of it right now. And I think that has some comfort level in terms of getting things done. However, when you are doing the cadence for coming back to work, we have to think about the phasing. And we talked about a shift work and some other options for that to happen. If you are going to bring people back to work right away, and I know that Jackie referred to this in terms of a contract for how you're going to come back, you may want to seek some legal advice about the working conditions, because it is a new working condition. We are all a little bit at risk, and we want to mitigate that and make sure that everybody understands that before they come back. So how many people, the big question, do we bring back safely and initially over time? Again, we are mandated by that 6-foot radius and 6-foot physical distancing. So you will have a maximum capacity that you can bring back comfortably to your office. And you want to be conservative in this number. There are more risks to maximizing your office than there are to gently and slowly and methodically bringing people back over a period of time. Any kind of percentage from 20 to 40% of your maximum capacity is probably a good factor to begin with. So instead of saying, okay, we're open for business, 25 people can come back, maybe it's an initial 10 or 15 to begin with, just to see how things are going to progress. That will also, in terms of how you ramp up, depend on how people comply with the new rules, their comfort level, your business needs, and what happens with our infection rates, frankly. So just to spend a little bit of time, not too much, some ideas for how you might maximize the alternative office ideas. Shift work, maybe some of your group works Monday, Wednesday, maybe Tuesday, Thursday, maybe there's non-overlapping, maybe there's a morning shift and an afternoon shift with work from home. And then, of course, considering the work from home options. And you have to decide who really does qualify for this. There are some jobs that it's not going to work from home forever. We're doing it now, but probably not in the most ideal situations. So this may be something that you want to consider in terms of, are you prepared to do that? So if work from home is a viable alternative for you, what are the barriers to working from home? Well, one of them is parity in terms of how people perceive working from home. Some people think it's great and they'd love to work from home all the time. Others view it as kind of I have to be home for a little bit longer. So the communication factor and what that means. Digital isolation. I know I feel it. I know everybody on this call has been the victim of bad technology, dropped calls, dropped videos, not sharing a presentation. I mean, we've seen it and done it and heard it all. So how do we make distance seamless? How do we make it feel like we are all together if we are truly going to be working from home for an extended period of time? And then if you're working from home, what are your hours? Are you an 8 to 5, or can you work maybe 8 to noon and then come back at 3 and work till 8? Is it a linear process, or can I be a little more flexible? And I think I heard pretty much everybody echo the fact that we're going to have to be flexible at this point in time. And certainly making sure that technology is appropriate and ergonomics and access to that. This has been a real test of our corporate preparedness. Are we prepared technology-wise to have everybody be able to log in and get their work done and work from a distance? So some companies are better prepared than others, but it certainly taught us a great deal, and we're learning as we go. So just as this slide illustrates, everybody's home office looks a little different, and you can see mine looks very different than the other speakers, as does Jason's. So one of the things we really want to talk about is provisioning that home office. And this may be something that employers need to think about. Can we provide through a stipend or some sort of reimbursement to give people height adjustable work surfaces or a more comfortable chair to sit in for long periods of time in a home office? Collaboration space in terms of, I'd like to, come into the office. I need to collaborate with my coworkers. How can we make that distance disappear virtually? And then guidelines and policies. If I do want to come into the office, how do I approach the office? Are there apps? Is there some software that perhaps I can use that tells me it's safe for you to come in the office? The capacity in the office today is under our maximum. You can check out a room for a meeting. You can find a seat where you can work for a period of time. If you're interested in some of that information, there are great tools out there that are available right now for you to implement in your workspaces. So I can talk a little more at length about those if we'd like to dive into those offline. So I love the fact that Bonnie made reference to the fact that she's doing a different kind of job now than she's used to. And that's very much what a lot of us are going to be faced with. There are going to be a lot of questions going forward, a lot of situations that we've never been forced to face in our work life. And so there should be someone at your organization that's capable of at least finding that answer or has the means to look for that answer. So creating new jobs or adding on to some people's job responsibilities is very much a part of what might happen under the new conditions. So to kind of get to the meat of the matter, what about physical distancing? And first, an analysis of your workplace has to happen so you can get to that maximum capacity. Maintaining the proper distances in between and being diligent about that. There has to be visual clues. Can I go in this room if I have 4 people? Can I use this space with only 2 people? What does an enclosed room capacity look like? We have to be able to communicate that very easily, very efficiently, and quickly for our people to feel comfortable. Because if they're not feeling comfortable, it's really tough to do a great job and to feel productive if you're worried about your health or the health of others around you. So I'm going to whiz through this pretty quickly, but I've given you a couple of examples here on the screen of what that plan analysis might look like. So using that 6-foot distancing and a 6-foot circumference, this is a workstation example on the upper right-hand corner of a group of 6 workstations together. Under the new guidelines, to determine your maximum capacity, this 6-person station now is going to be a 3-person station. So you're reducing your capacity by about 50% to adhere to that 6-foot distancing. Enclosed rooms are a little tougher. This is a room that is a 10-person capacity, and we're at about 30% capacity with about 3 people using a room for 10. So we could make some modifications here, push the tables a little further apart. We could probably get 4 people in here and not have any overlapping 6-foot distances. But again, what that 3 represents at the door is that's my visual cue that tells me I can have 3 people in this room. And with 3 people, I'm safe. And I'm safe myself and safe for the others in the room. If we have a shared situation like this, maybe kitchenette with a little supply room, you'll need to think about making visual clues that are a little more explicit, whether that's tape on the floor at every 6-foot interval, telling the occupants of this space that there are possibility of 7 people that could really use this space comfortably. Or maybe a more permanent solution might be, if you have carpet tiles, inserting some carpet tiles of a different color to say this is a 6-foot mark and down there that's another 6-foot mark. So you'll be able to see where you can comfortably stand at the microwave, the refrigerator, the copier, the plotter, whatever it might be, without compromising the 6-foot distances. So I did a couple more just to kind of give you an illustration. And again, this is something that we can do for you in terms of taking your plan and looking at what you might be able to accommodate in terms of figuring out your maximum capacity. I took a 6x6, an 8x10 workstation, and a 6x8 workstation. They're all about the same, about 50% capacity. So now I want to give you some real life examples, or at least illustrations of what a real life condition might look like. So in the now, this is kind of what it looked like when we left the office. In the near, to make some accommodations for when we come back to work, you'll see that we've removed the mobile pedestal that has a little visitor seat on top of it. That is purposeful. We don't want visitors to encroach or invite them into that 6-foot radius. We want to keep people at a safe distance as they work. So that's been removed from the equation completely. This assumes also in the near that you are entertaining shift work, staggered work schedules, a 50% occupancy, or this would be an 8-person cluster for workstations. We're probably looking at no more than 4 people. The 2 far ends of this workstation on either side will be used and utilized in the near. In the far, we've added some additional screening. We've increased the height between the workstations. There's about, again, a reduced amount of capacity in the far or the future. This will be probably what we're thinking you will have to think about in terms of that slight rearranging of your workstations. So this next one also, another illustration. And the question here, I know a lot of you might have is, do I have to redo my whole office? Do I have to buy all new things? No, you don't have to. You've made a great investment, and hopefully the furniture that you have can be modified. And again, that's something that we can certainly help you with. What you're seeing here in the now, this is how we left the office with dual monitors as the separation between the individuals. In the near, again, social distancing or physical distancing is going to have to be a factor. Additional screens, boundary screens on one end to prohibit people from kind of coming into the workspace. The capacity is going to be reduced. It's probably going to be 1 on one side and 2 people on the other to harken back to that 6-foot radius. And in the far, what we've done is completely kind of reoriented these workstations. We've pushed that visitor mobile ped into the actual workstation. We've reoriented the workstations to all face the same direction. We've added additional screening on both the center spline and on the outside and between each individual. So as you can see, it's minor modifications that can be made, but these will ensure a level of comfort for both your employees and guests that might come in to make the statement that we have thought about the safety of our employees, and this is a major concern for us. One of the other things that we have in a lot of our workspaces now is that ancillary space. Where do we go to sort of re-energize and informally meet? Those spaces are probably more important now than they ever have been. That social distancing, people are going to be super excited to see each other, not just virtually, but really see each other. But we also have to give visual clues that we have to maintain that distance. And that can be done with divisions, space dividers. It can be done with furniture like a bookcase, biophilia, live plants. It's a really friendly way of saying, here's a barrier, but it's a really friendly barrier. And it does good things for you emotionally and physically as well. So we don't want to give up those ancillary spaces. They're really key to how we do our work today and how we want to do our work in the future. And finally, where do we go to eat and socialize? Well, our cafeterias will have to change. What you're seeing in the lower left-hand corner is the before. This is how we left the office cafe. And the transition that we might see in the future. We've reduced the number of seats at the bar. We've reduced the number of tables. This implies that there might be a reduction in the lunch hour or a staggered lunch hour. Maybe some people start at 11:30 and go to 12:30, and then there's a second shift from 12:30 to 1:30. So it's both physical and operational, the changes that we're going to have to make to the workplace to make it really effective and to make it safe. So just to conclude, there are some key takeaways. The questions are going to remain. You know, are masks here to stay? What do I do about visitors? Does my receptionist need to take everyone's temperature? How do I get a delivery? And what do I do with the box? Should I quarantine the box for 2 or 3 days? All of those things are things that you'll have to decide. But the primary thing that I want to leave you with is that employee well-being is top of mind. Bringing people back and ensuring that their physical, cognitive, and emotional well-being is the most important thing on our agenda right now. Organizational culture, we alluded to that in earlier presentations. It's going to feel different. people who have been away from the office for a long time are going to need to kind of get reoriented. And certainly with the new protocols, a whole orientation is going to have to take place. And especially for those employees that have been furloughed or that are coming back after a long period of being kind of outside the loop, how do we make them feel like they are part of the organization again? We don't want to lose what makes us unique and what makes the company great. And that's the DNA in our culture. That really is the organization. And then lastly, transforming your floor plate, making sure that you understand what your capacity is, adhering to that, doing a slow transition back into the workplace so everyone feels safe and secure as they transition back. So that is the end of my presentation. I kind of went through that very quickly, but if you're interested in any more information, I've left both my cell phone number and my current home email, but you can certainly reach me through DMI or Atmosphere Commercial Interiors as well. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Deb, very, very much. Due to constraints in time, we've run out of time for questions, but I cannot thank you all enough. To our great panelists, to Deb Alton with Atmosphere Commercial Interiors, Jackie Anderson with the QTI Group, and to Bonnie Koenig with Public Health Madison, Dane County. Fantastic information for all of our members. This has been recorded, so you can watch us at any time. We also will send out all of the presentations, all three of the presentations, to each of our attendees as well. And then we also got contact information as part of those presentations. So if you have specific questions, please use that contact information to contact Deb, Bonnie, or Jackie. Last, before we go, absolutely want to thank our major series sponsor, Sinair, for all of their help, our program sponsor, the Fiore Companies, and our host sponsor, the Hilton Madison Monona Terrace. Thank you for continuing your support of DMI and being able to move everything virtually. We are all very thankful. Thank you as well to all of you guys that joined us. We had about 100 people. It was fantastic. We really are thankful to all of our DMI members. Hopefully we'll see you soon at a future virtual event, and I hope you all stay happy and healthy. Be well, everyone. Thank you very much.